Good morning, good afternoon. My name is David Legrand. I'll be your host for the next 45 minutes. I have the pleasure to work with Niravias and Celine Blanc in the next 45 minutes to talk about how you can accelerate your retail media network and data monetization journey. Before we get started, let's do a quick introduction. Celine, based in Paris, France, is a sales manager for Databricks, one of our joint hosts for this talk. Celine has a deep experience within the industry and retail CPG, and has pleasantly provided to speak with us today. Nirav is a VP head of Martech and AdTech at Tredence, has implemented 8 out of the 10 retail media networks in the world. Very deep experience. What we hope to get over the next 45 minutes is a great understanding of how you can start to build your retail media network and how you can move forward. Before we do, you might not be familiar with Databricks or Tredence. Let me give you a short overview. Databricks is the data intelligence company. It is the foundational model for Gen AI use cases. It's built upon the first Delta Lake technology. It's simple, open, and multi-cloud, and now intelligent. Databricks is also platform agnostic. It can be your tool for your cloud data lake on Microsoft, AWS, or Google. Tredence, who I work for, is a last mile adoption a global solution integrator. We work with 8 of the 10 CPG and retailers globally. We're vertically integrated, and we work through business use case first type solutions. Before we get started here, let's talk a little bit to Celine about how people are moving to Databricks. Well, I've seen in the press, whether it be your local newspaper, the television, or the Wall Street Journal, data, AI, and Gen AI is super focused today. There's super a lot of discussions going on. So let me ask Celine the first question. Why are people transitioning to Databricks today, Celine?
Well, for different reasons. That goes top to strategic goals up until very operational priorities. But mainly our customers are moving to Databricks today because they have this very important need to mobilize their data across all of their platforms, all of their regions, to serve the purpose of strategic business goals such as having a better customer experience or better personalized experience, online and offline, but also all the way down to being able to provide those customers with an efficient and cost-effective supply chain. So for all of those reasons, those companies need to de-siloed their data because they used to have a lot of different tools to manage this data, but as of today, this doesn't work seamlessly. It doesn't provide performances, and it doesn't provide lower TCO. So for all of those reasons, they need this centralized, unified, and open end-to-end platform that allow them to have this tech enabler to reach their business and strategic goals. So this is one of the many reasons customers are moving to Databricks, along with 2 other very important. One being having the ability to be agile when it comes to being compliant to regulation, and therefore having one single end-to-end data platform is critical to reach that objective and being compliant toward any kind of regulation where our customers can operate. But also there is this very important need to tackle the new opportunities that generative AI brought to the market. And for that, you also need to have an end-to-end data platform because generative AI will give you the power to leverage all of your data. But again, if this data is siloed in different places, then you lose all of the power of having a single way to address all of the semantic of your company through a governed and secured platform. So for all of those reasons, tactical, operational, but also very strategic, and being able to communicate positively to the shareholders when it comes to the future of the company, those companies come to Databricks to have this end-to-end data platform.
Wow, it sounds like we partnered with the right partner to talk about retail media networks. It sounds like it's an ideal platform for retail media networks and data monetization. So Nirav, let's ask you a question then. Let's set the stage why retail media networks are booming today.
Yeah, and so kind of a bit of context for those not as familiar with retail media networks in general or commerce media networks as they begin to expand past retail. As you go on e-commerce websites, you start to see advertisements on there. You start to see things like sponsored search posts, right, where an advertiser or a brand is paying to put their brand or their product at the top of your search page, or directly as you're seeing in kind of the Uber apps or on Amazon's apps, right, specifically advertisements, whether that's video or banner ads, right? These new units are being integrated into the e-commerce experience. And one of the largest reasons for that is the revenue opportunity that's available to retailers and now new entrants into the commerce media space, travel and hospitality, financial services, that. And you can just look at it from the size of the market, right? Just in 2022, the market was just under $41 billion. Amazon was roughly about half that, about 18 to 19 billion. This in 2023, Amazon's advertising business will be about $46 billion, right? And growing. The entire market is set to be at about 100 billion in 2026. We're probably underestimating that. The other piece that's important for this is that market and that revenue that's coming in is extremely high margin. And for many retailers, grocers in particular, that's a shift in the business model, but it's providing an advantage to them, which is a higher revenue, high margin stream, right, that they hadn't originally had available to them. And if we look at a little bit of why that's happening, right? It has to do with a series of different market forces, right? On the left-hand side, right, you've got changing privacy regulations and the kind of restriction of the technology landscape from providers because of that. So Google deprecated their internal identifiers. Apple deprecated their internal identifiers. Google is going to deprecate third-party cookies by the end of this year, early next year. And so you've got the shift in the privacy landscape, additional regulations coming in across the globe, right? The technology companies responding to that, and a change in consumer preferences, right? To not want to overly share information to brands or companies unless they see significant value from it. And on the right-hand side, the opportunity that comes from this is, the substantial shift in consumer behavior to purchasing or doing more and more of their shopping journey online, right? And the fact that more and more of their media consumption is now been digitized, right? Whether that's on streaming apps, whether that's on YouTube or on your connected TVs, right? More and more digital transactions are available for you from a mindshare perspective. And that makes it easier to have more relevant communication sent to you. And if you look at it from an outcomes perspective, right? Commerce media margins range between 50 to 80% on the high end, right? More than a quarter of retailers make over $100 million on their media networks, right? And then Amazon ads went from 4.6 to $46 billion in 6 years and is on pace to exceed 70 billion by 2027, right? And so that opportunity is what folks are gravitating towards.
So let's talk a little bit about the challenges then. If the market looks like it's going to move upward, what is preventing people today from engaging from a deployment design perspective, Nirav?
Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about it in terms of this is now the second generation of retail and commerce media, right? And in the first generation, companies typically outsourced or provided as a managed service the retail media network, kind of thought of it as free money. So typically their agency providers would have come in and took over those services. Now, as they start to look and say, man, there's this huge opportunity, I'm setting these growth targets with my board, right, or my larger investor community and base to the market, right? You start to think about saying, what is the strategy monetize, right? Not everyone will do what Walmart and Amazon and Kroger are doing or what Carrefour is doing in Europe, right? And so there's a number of different business models in place here. And so that first piece is, what is the actual target? How much of that margin do we want to actually capture, right? And are we willing to put the investments together associated for that? And part of that also means, how do I design my retail media network for the various audiences, right? I have the brand teams that are involved. I also have agency and media teams that are buying the media, right? I have my internal operations team, my internal analytics teams, and then I have the analytics teams on the brand side. So there's a lot of different audiences, and that shapes the discussion around should they be making data products? What type of data and insights products should they be providing, right? How do they kind of drive adoption and value with their partners so the partners want to invest media dollars with them? Yeah, and the core element around all that really is the data and the analytics platforms itself. And so when we start thinking about that, the key question really becomes, what are the right decisions on a build versus buy, right? What are the right platforms that we should be leveraging? Which components within the hyperscaler platforms should we be working with? And finally, how do we really execute this well, right? Because we don't want to spend 18 to 24 months to build this. We'd really like to be in an environment where within 3 to 6 months, we can start to see value, we can start piloting it, right? And we can show the return on the technology investments we're making, as well as the investments we're making in the organization to build up our media network, right? The people and the process sides of things. And if you look at it, right, the three key opportunities are really about how do we monetize the experience itself between what's on my physical property, right? My digital property as well as my physical property in store, as well as kind of the audiences I might make available through the broader advertising ecosystem, right? How do I create more of a composable structure that gives me more opportunities to say, I want to buy some things, right? But there's core parts of the platform that I want to own and build, typically a lot of the data elements associated with that, right? And then finally, right, how do I provide the right level of measurement and reporting, right, to my partners so that they see value? And increasingly in that third element, we're starting to see things like data collaboration technologies come into play so that the retailers and the commerce media players, right, and their brands can share data together, share insights together in a way that may not have been possible a few years ago because of the privacy environment, because they didn't want to physically move data, and because it was incredibly cost prohibitive to do advanced analytics and machine learning on collaborative data sets. And we made a significant amount of breakthroughs over the past 3 years to bring those costs down and enable brands to do this in a privacy compliant manner, right, without actually having to build all the infrastructure themselves.
Wow, thank you very much. I mean, there's a lot to think about. Now, Europe operates a little bit different than the United States. Their privacy rules are a little bit more stringent, but data is data. Celine, maybe this is a yes or no question, but do you see these same challenges in Europe as what we've seen in other parts of the world?
Yes, we see the exact same challenges, even if in Europe we might have take ownership of them a little later than some of our peers in the US. But yes, we see the same challenges, and the question is, what is the right infrastructure? What is the right partner ecosystem? Because even if with a platform like Databricks, the mean is not to boil the ocean. So we do what we do very well, providing a core data platform with all of the capabilities to provide quality data, control over data, performances, scalability, and cost. But at the very end, this is an ecosystem to work with. Just for instance, if you work on the retail media network, you will definitely need clean rooms. And clean rooms require key capabilities to open up the data in a very secured way, compliant way with the different regulation, whether this is in Europe, France, or in the rest of the world. So we see the very same challenges, the very same questions. The benefit is that with all of the experience already captured in the US, then this is a source of inspiration for the companies in Europe. No question about that. And there's a true way together, Databricks and Tredence, to accelerate this journey for the folks in Europe and in France.
Well, thank you for that insight. Now, you brought up the point of clean room. I'm going to go back to Nirav and ask him a question, really. We're talking about starting and building a strategy and how to execute and so forth. Let's take the question of, let's make media network simple. What are the three core dimensions of retail media networks?
Yeah. And so when we think about it, right, the first is the inventory itself. What type of ad units am I going to actually present to my customers and my audiences. And again, that's easy to kind of think about on the web and the mobile experience. The challenge that most folks are kind of running into is that's going to compete against my own personalized experiences. So if I'm a retailer, right, do I show an advertisement or do I show a product that's going to result in something going into the shopping cart, right? Ideally, I show an advertisement that's going to go into the shopping cart and that the individual is going to buy, right? So those are the challenges from an optimization perspective that's coming in. And we also want to make sure that the advertisements that we're showing to the person, right, are relevant, right? That they're optimized to actually drive conversion events, drive affinity for the brand, right? And increasingly, we're leveraging artificial intelligence to make that happen, right? To actually make it relevant at scale. The second piece of the audience themselves, and we kind of think of that in two major buckets. The first is addressable. These are kind of the demographics, the behaviors, right? Are you in market for electronics product or a luxury good? Are you buying new baby products because you have a young child in the home? That sort of thing. And then increasingly kind of AI-driven addressable, which is kind of predictive attributes around kind of demographics and behaviors where we may not have all that information, but we can infer it, right? Or we can add kind of new attributes because we think that someone has this type of affinity for sports. And the second now, increasingly so, is contextual audiences. And that's really around the context of the content that they're viewing, as well as where in the journey they are. So am I in market for buying an automobile, right? Am I in market for buying a home because they started a mortgage application, right? And so those parts of the journey become very important because individual properties will have that information, right? And sharing that across the ecosystem in a privacy compliant manner, right, is the challenge itself. But there's ways of kind of making that happen and providing that information out so that we can have relevant communications to you in the journey, right? Right content at the right moment for the right person. Now, if you take those first two pieces together as the what on what's happening and the when, right? The third element, this touches on Celine's point about clean rooms, is really around the measurement itself. And that's taking the data and the analytics and showcasing it to the brands and saying, what was the value and the impact of the dollar you spent on me, right? And that becomes incredibly important because if I can justify the investment and I can see the return on investment, then I'm much more likely to engage with that commerce media network. I'm much more likely to spend more dollars with them, right? And I'm more likely to maintain an extensive relationship with them over years. I may even make an upfront agreement with them, right, for commitments, right, for multiple years. The question around measurement really becomes how much of that do we build for our suppliers and how do we build that to get adoption from them so that they see value, right, in not only the media investments, but value in us creating the analytics and insights reporting for them.
So that's an interesting point, Nira. The measurement piece clearly brings in Databricks, right? The open format, the any type of data, real-time data. That is fundamental, really, having a platform to be able to handle data. Sounds like go forward. I look forward to hearing a little bit more from Celine here in a bit on Databricks capability. But let's keep moving on here. So if you have these three dimensions, let's talk a little bit about solving for them. What are their benefits by delivering a retail media network?
If we get these three dimensions right, what we see for the commerce media network and the retailers in particular is significant value in new revenue streams, right? And we talked about that 50 to 70+% margin, sometimes as high as 80 to 90% early on. But this is kind of like the proof in the pudding, right? And work that we've done with retailers, right? Which is we provide kind of the right inventory, the right audiences, and the right analytics capabilities using clean room environments for that first use case. You saw a 6x improvement in the suppliers investing dollars into the media network. And that's because they were seeing significant value. The other point that's been really, really interesting is that as we add more and more inventory, right, and add more and more audiences, if we're also adding analytics capabilities, the CPMs, the cost per thousand advertisements that a brand is buying, we find that they're more willing to pay a higher CPM on the commerce media network itself because they're able to justify the investment in the marketplace. And that's been interesting across multiple retailers, where as we add measurement and analytics capabilities and more brands enter the platform, we don't see a dilution in the actual willingness for the brand to pay a premium on the advertising inventory. Actually, it's completely opposite, that it actually scales very well or actually increases. And that, again, is tied very much to the analytics providing value and the justification for the ROI. That results in higher media budgets. And then from a practical perspective, where Databricks as a platform is also helping, not just from the data analytics and kind of overall cloud infrastructure, is that you're seeing higher match rates against audiences that brands are bringing to the table, or if they're leveraging alternative currencies. And then this is also resulting in kind of higher adoption of analytics and measurement services that the commerce media networks are playing, because the platform's making it easy and the platform is providing advanced analytics capabilities that provide the type of insights that brands were not able to get before at a level and scale that they were not able to get before. And so they decide to use the platform not only for some of the return on investment analytics that they're doing, but as we'll showcase in kind of an example from an actual brand story, the type of insights that can be driven across the entire funnel of activities, right, from creative development, new persona targeting, as well as kind of testing and learning capabilities and campaigns, right, across different types of mediums. And clean rooms become critical, right, as well as data collaboration ecosystems overall, because without having that infrastructure together, it becomes terribly difficult to share information across different organizations, particularly because PII is required in some way, shape, or form to do joins, right, without a clean room infrastructure. And so this is where we see Databricks, right, Delta, and the new Databricks clean room capabilities really shining at being able to provide collaboration capabilities at scale.
So interesting. So not only did you get marketing efficiency by using the Databricks platform, the data intelligence platform, you're also going to get infrastructure efficiencies and cost reductions. Interesting points that you make. I can't wait to learn more about that. Let's talk a little bit about our successes here along the way. I want to get, after this, I want to get a little techie to talk about the architecture. But, you know, you've talked about why it's important and how to overcome the challenges. But, and you have experience working with 8 of the 10 largest RMNs. So where has it been documented?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's interesting because lots of folks are talking about the space, right? And for us, the proof is in the pudding, right? We've moved past theory. We've actually helped folks design, kind of build and run their media networks, right? Not just on the retail side, on the media side, and travel and hospitality side. And, a number of different examples, right, and how those networks are thinking about what they're offering, but also how we're engaging with them. So one of the first examples is a large global retail media network. We serve as their marketing science team, right, providing the analytics and insight services that they give to their brands. So when their brands engage in a new campaign, the performance and reporting around that our teams are undertaking. We're also doing bespoke machine learning and advanced analytics capabilities, some of which we'll showcase in a demo in a little bit. What's interesting is that that this extends past retail as well. So with a large travel and hospitality firm, we're now we help them kind of implement their underlying customer data platform, help drive personalization, and help drive kind of more targeted kind of communications on their first party properties. That's now extending into their media properties and how they do data collaboration with other partners. And the idea here is that much before you even go on a journey, right, when you're that kind of initial kind of search phase, right, can I engage with you? Can I provide relevant communications? And then as you go from kind of initial search and discovery to actually purchasing a trip or a cruise, right, then there's that kind of selection of your itinerary. So the idea is really kind of guide and create more personalized experiences end to end, right? So that when you actually embark on your vacation, right, you feel like you've been given the right information, right? And that we've taken a little bit of a burden off you, right? Because, right, we've made it so easy. And the collaboration technologies there and the underlying data platform there is critical because of the data volumes. And this is where Databricks helps out at scale. And then on the last two sides, right, we'll talk a little bit more about, right, kind of in the media space itself, where we've worked extensively on kind of helping retailers build out their own media networks themselves, the analytics capabilities across the three pillars that we brought together. And when we do that well, right, as I mentioned, right, we see significant increases in their ability to monetize because they're providing more value to the brands. And we're able to do this with our partners at Databricks, right? In that last example, on being able to provide these capabilities and do it in a way that actually reduces the cost of the overall platform. As Celine was mentioning early on, the TCO of kind of running this, and not just the TCO of running it from a technology investment perspective, but the TCO of also running it from an organizational perspective, which is where we step in with Databricks to help extensively to provide data science, data engineering capabilities, so brands can focus on that piece that's really important to them, right? What's differentiated from their business? How do they drive innovation, right? And then using both us and Databricks as that ability to scale up and scale down when needed.
Cool. So we've gone through what is a retail media network? Why are people moving to it? The market size increases that we're seeing here. Let's get a little techie right now, and let's talk a little bit about. Celine brought up the words clean room and brought up retail media networks. Let's just take a step back and let's understand the necessary components of a clean room.
Yeah, I mean, at a high level, it's very straightforward, right? I have advertising data from a publisher, Disney, Sky, BBC, for example, right? And then I've got a brand, right? Think the L'Oreals, the Estee Lauders of the world, right? The Unilevers of the world, right? And my brands want to understand, right? How did that investment that I made in kind of advertising, right, actually drive sales and business impact? And particularly for consumer product goods brands where they didn't have access to the transactional data available to them, right? You had a number of different research methods and ways, right? Media mix modeling, third-party research, syndicated data sets, right? But none of that was a direct tie to a consumer who actually ended up doing a purchase. Now with commerce and retail media, right, the retailers have the actual transaction information. And so if I can bring all three of these pieces together, particularly for consumer product goods, right, I get the end-to-end view of a consumer who saw an advertisement to actually doing a purchase, and then their connection and affinities to how they may have engaged or interacted with my brand itself. And so you can see that as a powerful combination of capabilities that were not available to CPG firms, right, for the history of CPG, really. And that's really changed over the last 3 to 4 years as more and more of these media networks have come in and they've provided more and more advanced analytics capabilities. The one point I'll make, right, is obviously CPG sees a large benefit here because it's been a dramatic shift from how they operated before. But this is applicable across all brands and all industries, right? Even if you're direct to consumer and you have your own conversion data, being able to bring that in and link it to other publishers in a privacy compliant manner, given all the changes that have happened over the last 4 years, given third-party cookie deprecation is just around the corner, right, is increasingly important. And so clean rooms are just as relevant for them as they are for our CPG friends as well.
So do you just make the comment that this architecture and the need for a clean room is the same whether you're a Sean, whether you're a Clark, you're Decathlon, or Gucci? They all have the same type of need to share data without having proprietary, that personal data that Europe so protects, basically hidden from other folks.
And increasingly to do that with more and more data about the consumer, right? So that I'm providing the relevant information and the ability to apply advanced analytics onto that, not just generative AI, but other machine learning capabilities around personalization, next best action, those sort of things, right? Those are expectations that consumers have, right? And so we need to be able to do that in a way that we respect their privacy, that we adhere to the legal frameworks that are in place, right? But that also allow us to do it at scale.
Okay. Let's start to really go techie here. I'm going to give you two minutes to go through. This is a very techie diagram, architectural diagram. Then I'd like to hear from Celine around the Databricks data intelligence platform.
Absolutely. So this kind of gives a little bit more of the detail on the types of data sets that are coming together, right, when we're doing these multi-party collaborations. So on the left-hand side for the brand, as you can see, they may have customer data around, brand loyalty, their engagements to different websites or mobile applications if the brand has done that, any communications or emails that the person may have opted into for the brand. And so there's kind of a journey that exists with the brand itself, right, that may be relevant to kind of bring into kind of understanding insights in terms of how are these people engaging with me, right? If someone has signed up and goes to my brand website as a consumer products good and they're interacting with me regularly, there's a pretty good chance that they're a very, very loyal consumer, right? How do I reflect that and provide those insights in? On the publisher side of the house, right, it's really their customers, right? But the advertising impressions that they're showing to brands, any contextual information around the content that they're seeing themselves, right? And then the content itself, right? So was it a video? Was it a banner ad? Was it a blog post? Was it a news article? Right? All that information would be relevant to kind of provide kind of insights into who they're engaging with and where they are in their journey. And then on the retail side, again, it's their customer transaction data, any retail loyalty data they may have, the purchases that they made, which is what the brands care about, and then the information about the product itself, right? Some of that which may have been provided with a brand as part of their e-commerce strategies with the retailer. And then what you begin to see on that bottom bucket is where the retailer begins to look a little bit like a publisher, where there's the advertising impressions for them, the audiences that they have, right, as well as their own advertising supply that's there. And so as you see it, these three dimensions or these three partners are coming together, right, to provide insights like where's the overlap in our customers, right? Where are their affinities with different types of contexts and products? How are they spatially, right? If we're going to do geolocation targeting or offers and coupons and promos when you happen to be near Starbucks or Costco or Walmart, right, or Carrefour, right? And then how do we provide more and more of that content in a relevant fashion? And how do we measure it, right? And then how do we create more specific audiences that may be relevant that go beyond kind of traditional demographic-based targeting or kind of like very rule-based targeting that would come in through? And finally, what we all care about, right, is did this drive an impact, right? Did it actually affect the purchase behavior of the consumer? Did it affect the loyalty of the consumer? Did it drive affinity and love for the brand, right? And so all of this, right, is now enabled, right, with data platforms, right? And Databricks allows you to do this at scale with Delta. And then now with Databricks Clean Rooms, right, we're also able to facilitate the collaboration either with Databricks Clean Rooms itself or the broader partner ecosystem that Databricks has brought to the table, right, that bring different pieces of this, right, to partners to help them jump into these collaborations very, very quickly and start to apply advanced analytics very quickly.
That's a great segue because now, Celine, I see a lot of Databricks competencies around here, data sharing, clean rooms, multitude of different data types. I'm seeing the Databricks marketplace. Could you talk a little bit about why the Databricks data intelligence platform has the unique capabilities to be central to this retail media network and clean room environment?
Sure. So in order to explain that, I think we need to go back a little bit to the origin of Databricks, but not too much, don't worry. Because actually Databricks was born from being able to compute massive amount of data in a real-time motion at scale in a very performant and cost-effective way. This is the very basic of Databricks, and this is what we do best. And in a retail media network environment, obviously you're going to compute a massive amount of data. So this very basic is the first level of why Databricks is very well suited for that kind of project. The second one is thanks to Delta Lake. So thanks to the Databricks platform, the data intelligence platform that is seated on your environment on top of your data, because we store everything in your data lake within your environment. Then Databricks is seated on top of it through two key technologies that we also have created and open sourced. The first one is Delta Lake. Delta Lake is this layer on top of your data lake that allows you to do advanced analytics, but also data science. Two things that you had to do in separate environments before, one in data lake, one in the data warehouse. Databricks really merged those two environments, so you have just one for all of your type of data, structured and unstructured. So that's the second layer that allows you to have a proper and effective retail media networks. The third one is Unity Catalog. I mentioned it before. Unity Catalog is this layer that allows you to do advanced analytics, predictive analytics, but also data science in a governed and secured way. Meaning you have all of the lineage of what is done with the data. You can grant access to a population and a different access to another one. All of this in this end-to-end unified data platform. And last but not least, and this is also one of the very foundational things that makes Databricks DNA, is the open source part. Everything is open source at Databricks, and we have this at our core DNA, and it makes our engineering teams move on a daily basis. And it means when it comes to retail media network, this needs to open your data and be open to other data, very relevant, because it means through the clean rooms that you can openly, securely, in a governed way, share your data, but also bring other data into your platform so you can enhance what you're doing with your own data, with third-party data that could come from other vendors, suppliers, partners, you name it, in a governed and secured way too, meaning being very compliant. So those four pillars of the Databricks platform, the data intelligence platform, make this platform very suitable for those topics, the retail media networks, because this is open, this is simple, this is unified, and it works across all of your IT ecosystem, meaning it will work cross clouds if you have multiple clouds with the same capabilities. It will work cross regions if you need to interoperate your data from China together with the US. The regulation is like very, very high in those two countries, and especially in China. So Databricks can allow you also to do this, to have a retail media networks approach that is global, but also that you can localize. So all of those things made really the data intelligence platform of Databricks, together with Tredence expertise on the matter, very relevant to tackle those kinds of strategic business goals that brands and retailer has worldwide, in EMEA, but also in France.
Wow. Very compelling. Little known fact, Celine, you started this portion speaking about the starting of Databricks. Little known fact is that Tredence and Databricks were started in the same year, roughly a decade ago. So we've had the same journey, and it's been very, very fun along the way. Let's take this now and be real. Nirav, I'd like you to talk a little bit about a demo and what is, we've talked about enriching marketing efforts and so forth. Let's talk about the how now.
Sure.
Can you take a couple of slides here to talk about what are the resultant decisions, what are the resultant business intelligence that results off of Tredence implemented retail media network on Databricks?
Yeah, and so what we're taking now is kind of an example on, like, the retailers obviously have a strong, compelling reason to do this. It's a high value revenue stream. But why would a brand go to a retailer and ask for these capabilities? What types of functionality would they get, and what types of analytics functionality should retailers be providing? And so just at a very high level, right, what we're looking at is the change in the privacy landscape, making most brands poor, unless they're CPG firms, right, where they've actually become kind of data rich. But as brands kind of face the challenge in the landscape, right, the question ends up becoming, how do I drive growth? And particularly, how do I optimize for lifetime value of the consumer versus the cost to acquire? And increasingly, how do I do that to find new audiences and segments? And we're going to showcase that in just a second. When we think about this for CPG brands, right, as they now have access to a lot more data that was not available, how do I use that kind of insights to reduce media waste, right? How do I bring that transaction information together to have insights and have more effective usage of my media dollars? Sometimes it may be also reduce the overall media spend that they have, while actually resulting in higher sales. And finally, as we think about the fact that this is a lot more data, as Celine was also mentioning, right, one of the core genesis of why Databricks was created, the volumes of data, right, are increasingly now going into the petabyte, if not exabyte range, right, the data sets that the retailers and the media companies have available to them, right? And so when I'm operating and doing analytics on that, I need new skill sets, and I need to be able to do that in a much rapid pace, right? So an example on this is I want to be able to change my creative. I want to be able to optimize my creative. I want to test that real time, right? As Celine was mentioning, like this is what Databricks was designed for. So as I want to do kind of dynamic, real time creative optimization and kind of test that against consumers and audiences and actually see transactions, right? These are things that the platform begins to enable. So I'm going to take over the screen. So hopefully there will be no glitches associated with that. Wonderful. So we've done this across industries for normal brands, but I actually walk through an illustrative example of kind of a journey that a brand took with us and with Databricks, right, on kind of leveraging retail media analytics to get more consumer insights. So at a very, very high level, the brand's question to us was, consumer growth is slowing down. We need to understand, are we targeting the right audience, and how do we find new audiences for growth? And we want to do it in a more data-driven manner, potentially leveraging these new data sets and data capabilities that are available to us. So what we did was we brought the transactional data together of the retailer with the advertising data of a media network and some of the behavioral attributes there. We applied a machine learning-based segmentation on those behavioral attributes, as well as some of the transactional attributes that were there, to naturally see kind of where do the models tell us on how many segments there were. And then the descriptions of the segments are based on kind of the kind of art around this, right? Which is how we saw kind of patterns and behaviors within these segments versus the overall population writ large. And so what you actually see here, right, is the overall lifetime value on the x-axis, right? The right-hand side is higher lifetime value, and then the cost to acquire. So up here, these are cheaper consumers to acquire. These are more expensive consumers to acquire. And the steady loyalists were an interesting subject because these were actually the folks that the brand was going after. They were incredibly brand loyal. They consumed the brand a lot. They purchased it a lot, right? The problem is when I consume that much, it's very hard for me to get you to consume even more. You may be a great target for word of mouth, for social media, to drive in deeper brand love. But in terms of driving sales and revenue growth, it's very, very hard because you're already consuming so much of me. What's interesting is there's just two segments on the bottom. The experiential value seekers were individuals who really value experiences with their friends and family. They like doing things together in a collaborative way. And the experimenters are folks that like to try the latest, greatest thing. Both of these segments were more difficult to acquire because they're more expensive. And originally the brand hadn't seen value on that, and so they hadn't been targeting them. But after looking at the data and the analytics, their thought was, all right, we think the EVSs may actually be our new target, right, from a growth perspective. And so we work with the brand and their agency team to first come in and say, all right, now we need to create new creative assets. We need to create a new creative brief, right? So let's think about what that should be, right? And how would we target these folks differently? As we went through that process and the journey, the question from the brand and their agency partners came back to us and said, all right, we understand who these EVSs are, but there's individual segments within them. Should we be targeting what makes them similar, or should we be targeting what makes them different? And how would we actually understand what the lift was? We couldn't answer that question, but we could say is that the platform could help them get there. And so what we did is we broke the EVSs into micro segments. And for a variety of reasons, they decided to focus on cohort 3 and cohort 15 as the most likely to be evangelical. We were hoping that word of mouth would drive growth. And so I'll show kind of the differences between these segments and how the brand and the creative team use the data powered by the platform to make these actions happen. So our cohort 3 segment within our experiential value seekers within Gen Z is much more likely than the population writ large to be into fitness, right? Travel, ebook, as well as gaming. And they're more likely to be in market for consumer electronics, hotels, healthcare, and car rentals. So when they travel, more likely to be renting a car. We thought that was because they're doing more closer trips, more likely to be doing things around fitness, health, and well-being. And so if we look at that fitness and travel trend, okay, that's something that's distinctly different about these folks than the population overall. And then if we look at the same Gen Z cohort within the experiential value seekers in this micro segment 15, you don't see the fitness element come through, but you see the travel element. You also see gaming and streaming coming in, right? Also much more likely to be in market for consumer electronics and personal care, and they're more likely to fly to destinations they're going to. And so from the agency perspective and the brand perspective, it was, should we target the fitness and travel piece of it, which was part of cohort 3? Should we be targeting the gaming and streaming part of cohort 15? Or should we be looking at the elements that are similar, maybe the travel or the kind of the affinity for kind of reading and literature that was tied together? And so 3 distinct campaigns were created, one targeting each one of the segments and one targeting what made the overall segment, the larger persona, the same. And they tested that out in market to understand what was the relevant lift. The interesting part that came out of the platform was not an argument for should we personalize or not. What came out was now every single brand in this global company's portfolio had a tool at their disposal to go through an exercise like this to make their own determination on when a brand should hyper personalize versus not, right? How much personalization is too much personalization, because the effort required to do that is just too big for us to take on. And so this became a tool from an insights perspective rather than just a media and marketing perspective. And one last piece that I'll bring out is within the data sets, we're actually able to bring the media market data together. And so in this case, we were looking at the American DMAs, which are the actual television markets that are available. And while the data sets itself didn't have any of the television data, we were actually able to see the impact of television spend on various markets on these different tests. It was about a 7 to 14 day lag. So increasingly, the view of the platform that was built and the capabilities provided by the Commerce Media Network wasn't just about measuring the efficacy of the commerce media spend. The brand came back to us and said, well, actually, this is now a test and learn platform, right? It's allowing me to do insights on understanding incremental lift and incremental impact. It allows me to measure the efficacy, though not perfectly, of other media spend that I wasn't expecting. And now I might actually be able to take this and the consumer insights I have and do new product development, even figure out the geographies on where I should launch those new products and have a test and control impact to that. And future state, this was not what the brand has put into place today, but what they're working towards is eventually I should be able to bring supply chain data in, right? If I'm spending advertising data and I'm driving demand in a market, but I'm going to be out of stock, I'm going to hit fees from SLAs against my retailers around OTIF fees, right? Why would I do that? But also I'm creating a negative experience to consumers, right? I'm advertising to them and the product's not in stock in the market that they're looking for. It's a terrible experience, right? So if I bring all these insights together, I can actually do more effective, not only media targeting, not only more effective product development, but also drive more effective operational impacts too, right? And this highlights a lot of what we love about working with Databricks, right? Is because we're able to bring these large data sets together. We're able to bring these insights together, right? And provide advanced analytics capabilities on it, right? To really drive innovation, right? For organizations across their business, even when we're not intending to start with a large scale transformation.
Making data intelligent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're ending up our session today. It's been very interactive, talking about the challenges, talking about the upside potential. We actually saw a live demo on the Databricks platform. Let me ask 2 simple closing questions. Celine, how can a client in EMEA get started with Databricks and yourself?
Well, very easily. All it needs is a hyperscaler environment like Microsoft, AWS, or GCP, and they can, with the click of a button, spin up a Databricks environment, and by default, they will have access to all of the capabilities that we have mentioned today, meaning Delta Lake for all of the data sharing that we talked about today, but also Unity Catalog for all the governance and security layers. So very easy. It's just at their fingertips, a click of a click button, and they can spin up an environment within their own VPC.
Interesting. So as Databricks is foundational, Tredence actually is an elite partner of Databricks. We have had now a lead partnership for the last 3 years. We're in fact been retail CPG partner of the year for 3 years. Nirav, last question to you then. How can customers interact with Tredence to get started in this area?
Reach out to Celine and the team, or reach out to us directly. We're happy to help engage customers wherever they are on their journey, right? Whether that's helping you think about how you design your retail media network or commerce media network, or if you're a brand, how you engage with one to come through, but also kind of building, running the platform and the insight services itself. I will say one thing, right? We have a bias for action, right? So that's why we love working with Databricks, right? Our goal is to move you from theory to action very, very quickly. And we're hoping that the fact that we've done this so many times with our partners at Databricks, right, that we can actually accelerate the journey. We typically think about providing impact in weeks and months, not quarters and years.
Great summary. So thank you very much for taking almost the last hour. You can reach out to Nirav here in the States or Celine in France. I'm on the East Coast of the United States myself. We thank you. We see this as a growing and very important area for the retail and CPG marketplaces, and we'll continue to provide more information in this area in the way of ebooks or webinars. In fact, one of our most effective motions is workshops that Celine and Nirav have run in the past. So I thank you for your time. I look forward, and we hope that this was informational for you all. Thanks kindly. Have a good afternoon and good morning.
Thank you.
Have one.